the concerns about the NBA addressing China are legitimate, but I think it's founded in a real sense of whataboutism from like groups of people that don't care about either issue. Like when you see a lot of people talking about why isn't LeBron saying this about China? It's like they don't care about what's happening in China. They more so care about LeBron and his stance on other things, and they want to discredit his stance on other things to pull in the China aspect of it. I think it is.
Let me put you on game.
We're going to get into a topic I think we both find really interesting, and that is Enes Kanter versus LeBron, part 7, basically. For our listeners who aren't familiar with Enes Kanter, he is a Turkish-born Muslim who has taken a stance on human rights, especially when it comes to Turkey and China. He has been protesting this season and last season, I think some in the bubble as well, by wearing sneakers in games that carry messages like free China and stop genocide, rape, slave labor, and torture to protest the alleged use of slave labor to produce Nike sneakers and other products. And Kanter has recently issued a challenge to Nike, to LeBron, and to Michael Jordan to take a stand and visit labor camps. He also recently tweeted, "Money over morals for the king. Sad and disgusting how these athletes pretend they care about social justice. They really do shut up and dribble when big boss, quote, China, unquote, says so. Did you educate yourself about the slave labor that made your shoes, or is that not part of your research?" The tweet also featured pictures of shoes depicting China's general secretary placing a crown on LeBron's head with bags of money surrounding them. So he's bringing all the heat. Yeah. LeBron responded by saying that Kanter was using his name to create an opportunity for himself. So they've had a war of words. They allegedly crossed each other in the hallway, and LeBron said he's a big talker, but he didn't say anything to him when they passed in the hallway. And then Kanter was like, well, he didn't say anything to me. So they're having a bit of back and forth going right now. Oh. But this is a subject that we've discussed a little bit on prior episodes when it comes to athletes and their responsibility in social justice. But what are your reactions to this this beef between these two NBA players?
Before I fully react, I think that there's some things that need to be mentioned. In this article from Yahoo, Ben Rohrbach, he did a really good job of just providing a plethora of information that I think is really relevant. To start, the NBA has an estimated 500 million viewers in China. 75% of the NBA players wore Nike apparel last season. Nike has an 8-year, $1 billion contract with the NBA to produce their on-court apparel, which a lot of it is manufactured and built in China. When the China Central Television cut the NBA programming after Daryl Morey's infamous tweet a couple years ago about the protests in Hong Kong, that cut the salary cap of the league by $3 million that year across the league. LeBron also has a lifetime contract with Nike for about $1 billion, allegedly.
Billy, yeah.
And 8.3 billion, or 20% of Nike's revenue, has come from China, from their apparel. Just to give you some context to how complicated and how much money is being exchanged here. So when I factored all of that, I thought that Kanter's claims that Nike and dozens of other companies get their materials from the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which scholars and activists have said that there's like a Uyghur genocide going on in China. It makes you wonder: are they turning a blind eye to injustice abroad because of profit and because of all this money that's being made? I think his overall point is kind of messy because it beckons people to think about the price of our lifestyle and, do we have social responsibility when it comes to other countries and their labor practices and them being a sovereign nation, and wondering who pays the most for those things. But I also think that I like that Kanter is bringing this question up, but I think that I don't know, this world is messy, man. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a fan of LeBron and I like to wear Nikes. You know what I mean?
I remember running off on Eddie's couch.
Oh man. But I think ultimately human rights is an important topic to discuss. Um, Nike has said repeatedly that their materials are not sourced from that region, but other reports by people on the ground have claimed otherwise. And how much, what is their responsibility? What exactly should they say and should they do? Um, Knowing all this information and knowing how complicated it can be. Also, the other idea of maybe not wanting slave labor to do and to produce your materials, but at the end of the day, it is providing an economic opportunity for these other nations and for these people in rural parts of China, some kind of factory work, etc. Again, the conditions aren't great from what I hear, but again, I'm not sure how much should or can be done. So that's what I think from Kanter's position. From LeBron's position, he's not trying to give it much energy, and I think he's playing a very interesting diversion tactic. And this is not the hill that he really wants to die on. One, financially. Two, I don't think it's in his personal best interest to be all that educated on this topic. And so when he says Kanter's trying to use his name to create an opportunity for himself, I think that's a bit tone deaf, and is really just him trying to run around the issue overall, and he's just not trying to address it. Whether or not he has the capacity to do so is a different question. And I think that we all tend to focus our efforts on one thing or another and say, hey, if I don't have the time to really dig into this issue, I'm not going to try to speak about it and become some type of expert.
Yeah, I think you asked the question earlier if the NBA and guys like LeBron are turning a blind eye to the conditions in China, and the answer is yes. I think unequivocally the answer is yes. But I think there is a good conversation to have about if it's their personal responsibility to address it, you know, because I think that once you step into the arena of social justice, I think people have the idea that you are now for all social justice issues rather than just the one central issue that you're speaking about, which I don't know how fair that is or isn't. So it's a tough, it's kind of a rock and a hard place situation. And I will say that I do think that the concerns about the NBA addressing China are legitimate, but I think it's founded in a real sense of whataboutism from like groups of people that don't care about either issue. Like when you see a lot of people talking about like, why isn't LeBron saying this about China? It's like they don't care about what's happening in China. They more so care about LeBron and his stance on other things, and they want to discredit his stance on other things to pull in the China aspect of it. I think it is, if you do legitimately have concerns about China, I think that is a valid conversation to bring up. But I do think that a large amount of people that do bring it up don't care about what's happening to Muslims in China because they don't care about what's happening to Muslims in the United States either. So like it's a mixed bag on that one. And I do think that it's a little bit it's a little bit unfair to level criticism at athletes and expect them to be what we are not. Because I think that we all know the brutality and inequity that comes with consuming Apple products, but I think that we'll be the first to tweet or post about China from an iPhone. Like, and we're all aware that the slave labor that Kanter is directly referencing goes into Apple products.
Yeah.
Everyone owns some kind of Apple product, and if you don't, you probably don't own one because you're speaking out against the injustice of what happens when Apple products are made. So like they've become such an ingrained part of our lives that it's like the same iPhone, the same Mac, the same products that we use. It's the same equivalent to the $1 billion that LeBron doesn't want to mess up by speaking out on China. So it's a tough thing for us to ask these things of athletes when we don't even kind of meet that standard ourselves. But the same people that don't meet that standard are the same people that will go out and speak about Black Lives Matter and other domestic issues that we find to be pertinent to our lives, and that's okay. I think it's perfectly okay to be revolutionary and to be an activist in one thing and not be that in another, because not everyone is Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or like that. They're those people for a reason. We are just regular, everyday people. And I think that LeBron wants to be seen as that kind of person, but I think he's a lot closer to the everyday person than he is to being a revolutionary, which is fine, to be honest. And I think that we have to look at Kanter and also understand that These issues in China are likely a lot more relevant to him because of his faith. The same way that issues that affect underprivileged kids in Cleveland and in other places are close to LeBron. So I think that we also have to consider that. And I think it is also a bit odd because he had a quote on CNN where he was talking about Michael Jordan and saying how Michael Jordan was failing to do his part to contribute to help the Black community, but has all of this money and blah, blah, blah. And he was also saying, like, look at LeBron, look at what LeBron does. Like Michael Jordan doesn't do what LeBron does for his community, but it's like, but you're also criticizing LeBron for falling short when it comes to China. So it's like, you have to pick what, like, you can't be so hard line on one thing and then be so, praise him for the next thing. So it's tough. To wrap it all up, I guess I would say that I think that LeBron should say something about China, but I think that if you consider his contributions elsewhere, I don't think it's my place necessarily to criticize him for not doing so.
Yeah, LeBron is a philanthropist, first and foremost, between his academies that he started, his trust and scholarships that he's handing out, like turkeys, like Nino Brown in the winter. He's out here and he's doing what he can. And I also believe that Kanter is out there doing what he can as well. I think that Kanter kind of gets a little bit ahead of himself. And when I hear him talk on CNN, I'm like, he isn't the sharpest on some of these issues. And they're not asking him the most pressing questions that you might ask to like a journalist. He's just somebody who's emotionally invested and wants to see change. And he's kind of a lightning rod to bring attention to the situation. I thought you brought out some really good points about people are going to talk about the issues that hit closest to home to them. And then when I thought about what Kanter said about Michael Jordan and him having done nothing for the Black community, I thought that like these are really unfair points because he made it seem like donating to Black causes is just a frivolous thing.
Whatever. Yeah.
Not important. It's like, not important. Some millions that I've given to different charities and the like is very it's the least I could do. And and then thinking about in terms, I'm not going to get more into that, but I thought you made some really excellent points. And at the end of the day, there are atrocities, there are things that are happening. Let's talk about them, but let's talk about it from a standpoint of actually wanting to do something about it and not just pointing each other out and pointing out everybody's flaws and not really looking in the mirror to say what we can do to make the situation better.
Yeah, let's take some time to actually understand where everybody is coming from. And, you can bring awareness to issues without attacking other people. I think that's certainly possible. I do commend Kanter for bringing the issue to light, because I think without him, it might have gotten lost in the news cycle. So I do appreciate him doing that. I just think that there's a different way that he probably could have went about it. But, it's not the first time, not the last time. I'm sure we'll address it because they're not going to stop going at each other. At least Kanter's not going to stop going at him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward.